In Malagasy, if you see a verb, it gets a suffix. That suffix is not in the nominative, but in the genitive, and that is the subject. So that's the least marked form, and then your object is in the nominative. So in Malagasy, the basic default interpretation of a verb is that it is passive. Your agent is always backgrounded unless you bring it out. And you can bring it out by sticking in a prefix E. So if you just hear Haino Ko easy, this is he was listened to by me. I listened to him, then you have to mark it that I am the agent. And I doesn't refer to I, it refers to the fact that you're bringing out the agent. And then you get the subject in the nominative, and you get the object in the accusative, like from more familiar languages. So this is one of the few languages in the world we know about where voice is really obligatory. You need to specify a verb for active voice. Otherwise, it gets a passive interpretation. Now, is this really... So this is what we call inflectional, no problem, because it has to be there. Otherwise, the verb cannot function. This is not exactly what we see with the Turkish passive. So in the Turkish passive, we have at least two morphemes that express it, and they can be polysemous. So the cumulative expressions, they can mean passive, they can mean reflexive. They apply to some verbs to produce passives. There is some differentiation, like with C, you'll get like passive with U and reflexive with UN, but with Akmak you will get passive and reflexive in one form, and it's up to you to interpret it, and it's up to your context. So this is not exactly what inflection, it doesn't give you unpredictable forms, whereas here you get forms that are dependent on context. Then some forms will be only passive, and reflexive is not there. Other form, so you get this. You get something that is kind of restricted, kind of unpredictable. So it will be like your homework. One of the tasks that I'm going to give you at the end is to think more about the Turkish passive, and I'll give you criteria according to which to assess it, whether it is a inflectional or derivational category, and how much of an inflection and derivation it has in it. Now if we go to forms that are inflectional because they have to be there, languages of Asia have a lot of these that are called, depending on who is writing the grammar, they can be called participles, converbs, infinitives, or masdars. But what they have in common is that they cannot be used by themselves. They're never in a main clause, and they rarely, if ever, take personal mark. So here I've given you an example from Halk Mongolian, where you have several suffixes that derive such converbs. What these converbs do is essentially they're used instead of subordinate clauses, from what we know. So here you'll have the verb abi, take with had, and it will render taking his three as the king went to the woods. In Irish, which is an Indo-European language, you have also dependent verb forms that can only be used in the subordinate clause, and you also have even suppletion with those verb forms. So with the verbs to see, there are two different stems that show in the paradigm. Agreement, does it sound familiar? Agreement is something that is also prima facie inflection because it has to be there, otherwise you are branded as a illiterate or unknowing person, and sometimes it can even lead to the fact that people don't understand it. So I've given you here examples from French. In French, if a noun is, in French there are two genders. So if a noun is masculine, the modifiers in a noun phrase need to be masculine as well. So small and the indefinite article need to be masculine. If a noun is feminine, which you learn with a noun, then it assigns feminine gender to its modifiers. And the two concepts that you need to learn in agreement: what is the controller? Whichever word in a phrase that determines what gender its modifiers will get. So here in French, the nouns are controllers for the rest of the words in the noun phrase. So bateau, boat, is modifier for petit and kitchen is the controller for its modifiers. I will be referring to targets and controllers later on, so those are important. So that's one type. Now, agreement or indexation. Agreement comes from traditional grammar. It comes from Latin, where it was assumed the way grammars were written was that, oh, okay, modifiers have to agree with whatever gender there is, or subject or verbs have to agree with their subjects. Now we've seen a lot more languages than Latin, and we know that it's not always a question of agreement, but Bill Croft, who is one of the leading typology figures and cognitive linguists around the world, suggests the term indexation because for many things, what is reflected in the noun phrase or in the modifiers is the kind of entity and the properties it has. But it doesn't always have to be agreement, especially when we come to object agreement and other kinds of agreement that I'm going to show. So we're slowly moving